Hello everyone, welcome to the Facebook Live Bible Study. Today we will be talking about the overview of the two different types of beginnings in the Bible, Genesis and Matthew, the start to the end to the new start. Genesis, the beginning of the beginning. Genesis is divided into two sections, chapters 1 through 11, which discuss God and the world, and chapters 12 through 50, which discuss God and his covenant with his people. Today we will be discussing chapters 1 through 11 of Genesis. The journey of Genesis. The journey of Genesis starts from the darkness being made into light, from disorder, order, to the creation of a being in God's image, to the fall, to a separation between God and the man, to a point where civilization makes journeys downhill to the destructive path. Order from disorder. This is when Genesis talks about the creation. This is the first thing Genesis talks about. The world that we live in today came from nothing until God spoke. There were totals of 6 days of creation with 1 day where God rested. Now we'll go on to one of the more important and significant creations made by God, the creation of man. God made the creature he called the human, which in Hebrew is translated to Adam. He made Adam in his own image by giving his own breath. He poured life into him. As he created the humans, he also blessed them with the crucial and most important gift, the gift of free will. Because of his breath, and that it was given to the human was able to come to live, and the human inherited God's character and to the world, so God appointed him as God's representatives to rule the world on his behalf. God gave dominion to him over everything, from which they begin to take care of the world God has created for them. The key is that the humans have a choice about how they're going to build this world. Now, we'll be talking about the fall of man. God gave the humans the dignity and the freedom of a choice of free will. In chapter 3, a snake is introduced, and the snake tells a different story about the tree that was forbidden to the humans and how disobeying God will make the people like God themselves. The humans decide to take autonomy for themselves. They eat the fruit, enter a blaming game, and break their relationship with God. This decision made by Adam and Eve plunged down the whole human race down a destructive path. The prophecy and the covenant. In chapter 3, God condemns both the humans and the serpent. God curses humans to live a mortal life full of strife and hardships, and the serpent was cursed to crawl on his belly and eat the dust. And at last the wounded victor will crush the serpent, and the serpent will wound him as well. But the serpent will be defeated forever. Throughout the whole Bible, this covenant and prophecies about this covenant are mentioned time and time again, as well as reflected upon by the Bible. Now we'll look at the widening ripple effect of the rebellion. Cain and Abel. Now Cain got so jealous of his brother Abel that he wanted to murder him, and God warned Cain not to give in to temptation. But Cain murdered Abel in the field. So Cain goes then to build a city where violence and oppression remains. Lamech. Lamech is the first man in the Bible to have more than one wife. He accumulates them like property and then goes on to exalt himself about how he's more violent and vengeful than Cain ever was. The sons of God. The sons of God were people who claimed that they were descendants from God. They acquired as many wives as they wanted, and they produced the Nephilim, the great warriors of the old. The new Adam. Now God was disappointed, and he sends down a flood to wipe the whole earth from its corruption. But he saves Noah and his family. However, Noah ends up failing too. He gets drunk and becomes naked again like the old Adam. Now we'll talk about Matthew, the new beginning. Matthew arranged the orally taught lessons, stories, parables, miracles, and events accounted by eyewitnesses for 30 to 40 years in an amazing tapestry. He designs the book to highlight certain themes about Jesus: genealogy, birth, growth, baptism, testing, teaching, miracles, betrayal, denial, suffering, crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension. In today's session, we are only going to cover the basic fundamentals of the first 13 chapters. Now, the main theme of these first 13 chapters is that Jesus is the continuation of the fulfillment. Jesus is mentioned as being the Messiah from the line of David, the authoritative teacher like Moses, and his literal meaning is God is with us, or in Hebrew, Emmanuel. Now, let's look at the storyline captured by Matthew. The first 3 chapters provide an introduction to the book. It discusses the Abrahamic covenant, how Jesus is from the line of David, and discusses the Israelite situation from the deportation from Babylon to the return back home. This is the fulfillment of the prophecies. Also, it is discussed how Jesus, who is the teacher, is greater than Moses. He went out of Egypt, he was baptized, he experienced a wilderness journey, and contained the deliverance of the new covenant from the mountain. Chapters 4 through 7 provide teachings of the kingdom. Jesus announces the arrival of God's kingdom. Jesus confronts evil, restores God's reign, and creates a new family. Jesus discusses the kingdom of God and how it's going to be an upside-down kingdom, how there will be no social classes, and how everyone will be equal in the sight of God. Jesus' teaching fulfill the Torah and transform hearts. Chapters 8 through 10 bring the kingdom to people's lives. In chapters 8 through 10, we get 9 stories relating to healing, fulfilling, and Jesus giving life. Jesus trains and teaches his people to follow him. He sends his people out for the extension of the kingdom and prepares them for acceptance and rejection. Chapters 11 through 13 cover the responses of the people to Jesus' teaching. There were 3 main responses: positive, neutral, and negative. The broken-hearted were the ones who reciprocated positive responses simply because they were in that need of hope, and Jesus provided that. Those who had high expectations reciprocated a neutral response. One example of this is John the Baptist. Due to his high expectations of what the Messiah was, he was unable to fully receive the message. Those who reciprocated negative feelings and responses to Jesus' teaching were the conservatives, or rather the people who had set their hearts and minds on what they had previously learned. They had blocked themselves for accepting the change. Matthew covers the first 13 chapters by using Old Testament quotations. Matthew also discusses how Jesus focused on those who were not religious or those who were deemed unimportant, and he gave them faith and he transformed their lives.